Day 3 of testimony in the preliminary exam of John Skelton gave the judge more idea of his movements on November 26, 2010. That's the day Andrew, Alexander, and Tanner Skelton disappeared. The first witness of today was Kelsey Borowski. Her former stepfather is John Skelton's cousin. She testified that about 1 p.m. that day, a call came into her parents' house asking for someone to take John to the emergency room. She had just graduated from high school. One of her parents couldn't do it, and the other one just said they didn't want to. And I would be pretty upset if I were her all these years later, having to testify in this preliminary exam and potentially a murder trial when your parents should have taken him to the hospital. You were just a teenager. Anyway, Kelsey goes over to John's house on Congress Street, and she said she found him leaning on the dining room table heavily with an injured ankle. She said he had a manila envelope and cigarettes in his hand, and he was pretty injured. On cross-examination, she said John was wearing a robe, pajama pants, and slippers. She testified that John asked her to get a bag, and she helped him to the car, and he told her he wanted to go to the Fulton County Health Center in Wauseon. Now, during this drive, Borowski says that John was frantically texting and was on the phone with someone that she perceived to be Tanya, and she said that the boys were not going to be back in time for the custody trade-off. She also testified that this was an intense situation, and after the call, John said, "I lost my boys, I lost my kids," and then said something about the children being at a friend's house. She said she got the impression that the person on the other end of the call was Tanya, but she didn't know for certain. And she also testified that she asked John how he injured himself, but he brushed it off, and she said she really didn't care anyway. The next witness is John's aunt, Lisa Kern. She testified that earlier that same morning, again, the day after Thanksgiving, that around 6:30 or 7 in the morning, John came to her door and basically unloaded a box of stuff, including a camcorder and a USB drive. She said that John told her to hold on to the items and not give them to anybody without a warrant. She said that that John didn't explain why. She invited him in for a cup of coffee, and he said, "No, I can't. The boys are in the van." She said, "Bring them in." He said they're sleeping. The van was parked by the road, so she never laid eyes on the boys. She said she kept the camcorder and USB drive and never looked at what was on them. The following day, her sister-in-law came over and asked whether Kern had seen the boys. And when Kern learned they were missing, she mentioned to her sister-in-law about this camcorder and USB drive, and her sister-in-law said, "We need to take this to the police." On cross-examination, the defense really focused heavily on Lisa Kern's observations of John's relationships with his son. And pretty much the defense is doing this with all the witnesses. On cross-examination, they're really just saying, "But did you ever see John abuse his kids?" And everybody says no. And then the defense says, "Did John have a good relationship with his kids? Was he a good father?" And they say yes. So these first two accounts really show where John was on Black Friday. He went to the hospital that afternoon. He had been seen that morning with the camcorder and the USB drive, saying the boys were asleep in the van, but no one actually laid eyes on them.